right. So, Daniel,
Amir,
we made it.
Finally.
Yeah, we wanted to have a chat, and we are living now in special times. On one hand, we have the sports universe booming in terms of innovation and investment, and you know it from the entrepreneurial side and the investment side. And also, we are looking at the market, which is now a little bit shaky, especially I would say the capital markets. But this has obviously implications on everything. And I just asked you, since you're not far, to pop in and say hi, and maybe just so we can have a chat a little bit about, I would say, the current status, and a little bit just to hear your thoughts and overview. But also, I'm always I like to read biographies and history, and I always intrigued by the journey that people are going through. We see people from the outside. We see the successful people, and I see you going around the world and investing. But I think it's always in the details, and I think knowing our ecosystem and the startups we are, I would say, surrounded by, and the founders, and also brands, sport brands, sport properties. I would, just knowing a little bit from you, I think you have an inspirational story about how you grew up into where you are today, and what you've been through. It wasn't roses all the way. So I would really, if you can share a little bit, how did you start? I know you were an entrepreneur in a very early age. You grew up in London.
That's right.
So tell me a little bit, how did it all start?
So first of all, I really like the way you swept under the carpet the downturn in the venture capital. You started talking about that. I said, let's leave that. We'll talk about that later.
A little bit later.
Now let's talk about personal stuff for sure. So yes, as you say, I grew up in London, and I've been living here in Israel now for almost 23 years, which feels like a lifetime. Well, it is a lifetime. As an entrepreneur, I think I was always very entrepreneurial. I was always trying things. Even before it became business, I was always trying things out at university. I ran groups. I did trips for people, and just for my own pleasure, really. And when I got my first job out of university.
Which part of London, by the way?
North London, of course. Any good Jewish boy has to be from North London. We're not south of the river, that's for sure. So I was born in Southgate, which is up the Piccadilly line, almost near the end. Which is, not the most ultra Jewish areas. It's not Golders Green or Hendon, but I went to school with a lot of people from there. And I was very fortunate with a very strong traditional Jewish upbringing, parents who had their own business. So I think just even from the kitchen table, you pick up without even realizing it. Just when I look back on it, you pick up a different mindset of life and to a career, rather than just working a 9 to 5, and for better, for worse. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I definitely think that had a massive impact on me becoming, for want of a better term, an entrepreneur at some stage.
Your father, what did he do?
He had a business around wine. He was actually one of the first wine importers from France into England, and he was a major supplier for a lot of restaurants and bars, as well as having a retail side of business.
Entrepreneur, his own business, yeah?
So it was from his father. So his father was the entrepreneur. His father, who came from Poland and escaped Nazi Germany, set up a bottling business in London, and my father took it on straight out of school. And took it further in the West End, and it was a successful business.
There is a joke about an Israeli millionaire that he says he made his father a millionaire because before he was a billionaire.
Yeah, exactly.
Is this the same story? Or?
No. My father, I think...
He took the business forward?
He definitely took the business forward. In fact, one of my first experiences, or one of my first memories, is going to visit my father's shop, and his main business was B2B, supplying a lot of the bars and restaurants around the West End of London, which is still today the hip area. And we'd go into a restaurant, and my dad is the wine supplier, and it comes with a lot of kudos. And I was like 5, 6 years old, and he walks in and gets all showered with a welcome, and it was just great, that's my father.
Celebrity.
Yeah, really celebrity. So because of what he did, and but I really know that the engine for many of those years was my mother, who worked with him, and that's that's actually how they met.
Wow.
And she was if I look back on it, my father's very, very English in his mannerisms and his approach to business. My mother is much more this sort of entrepreneur. In fact, oh yeah, I mean, like my mother's this like small woman, but everyone always said you can hear her before you see her. It's like full of energy. She always did a million things, did a huge amount of charitable work for Israel as well, raising funds, always massively Zionist. She was born in India, moved to England when she was 13. I think there's a big element here of how seeing and living different cultures actually contributes to your entrepreneurial being. And my father, on the other hand, born in London, always lived in London. And I think the combination of that sort of very blocky way of looking at it, and then the completely out of the box way of my mother would looking at it, it's a great partnership to have, because you don't want to be too extreme this way or the other way. And I think that a lot of that sort of, to use the Nike slogan, just do it attitude, is from my mother, really. And I've been
you from early age, you knew you're going to start your own business, so it was like a fluke?
I don't think I ever really thought that far forward, to be honest. People, I remember being at university and people were saying, what are you going to be in 5 years' time? I was like, how the hell do I know? Why are we talking about 5 years' time? It never made sense to me. And in this day and age, when I'm a lot older, it makes even less sense. Take the pandemic as being one of the biggest indicators of we just do not know. And that doesn't mean sit on your ass and don't do anything. That means don't be afraid too much about what you don't know.
Yeah.
Now, that's an easy thing to say. It's not a concept that's simple to grasp and enact on. And I think that
but it was a state of mind of, I will deal with what's coming when it's come.
Sure.
When it comes.
But I think that looking back on it, it was natural with me. I didn't teach myself to be like that. And I'm so thankful. I think that, my strongest asset growing up was that I naturally didn't fear the uncertainty. I always actually, I think almost to a fault, I looked it out. I wanted the uncertainty. Wow. Whereas all of my peers, I remember the final year of university, everyone was like, oh, where am I going to be? I was like, why are you so worried? And I think other people looked at me like a bit of, on the one hand, disdain. On the other hand, a little bit of jealousy. It's like, how the hell is he not worried? It just never bothered me. But I didn't try to be like that. I was just fortunately like that, because that allowed me to do a huge amount of different things. Some failed, some succeeded.
No, I can relate to this in terms of being in an uncertainty is like my natural place. Yeah. But how are you when things are good? Because sometimes, when things are good, this is scary. Because usually you got used to to being out in the jungle and fighting and, and being underdog and you crossed the line in some stage. So you sold your business. And so I think how are you with handling
That's a really good question, because I think that what I learned at one stage is that sometimes I would be pushing change for change's sake. And that's dangerous. Constantly trying to change things up because either I'm getting bored and I need a new something.
I can relate to that.
And I had to be, someone actually had to put a bit of a mirror towards me around, I don't know, 2008, 2009, where I was doing it, because things were going very well. And sometimes when things are going well, just great, just keep the ship going forward. Yeah. And I'm like, let's now do this, let's now do this. Is that the entrepreneurial spirit?
Yeah.
Hang on, you're going to disrupt and derail potentially what's going well. And that's one of the things that I've had to really keep an eye on, because that's my natural tendency to make sure that if I'm leading a business, use that as a strength. Don't let it become a weakness, because, a weakness is often an overdone strength in some situations. So, being able to change things up and pivot is great under certain situations, but not always. And so I need to keep that in check. And I think that the further you go in life and you become a little bit wiser, and of course I'm a lot wiser than I used to be, and I guarantee you in 10 years I'm going to be wiser than I am today. You've got to learn how certain character traits can actually derail you and can cause you a whole host of problems.
So self-awareness is key to really understand what we're good at, and what I know for a fact that I'm always very similar, driving things forward, and I need somebody around me to help me take care of the day-to-day. And to be aware of that, I think it's very important, and to be aware of what we're good at and what we need help with.
Yes,
and 100%. To ask for this help and to create it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's that's something that as an entrepreneurs we it's better to discover ASAP, as I say.
Exactly. Otherwise, we could burn ourselves out on our own talents.
Yes. Yes. So if you look at the journey of you as an entrepreneur, give us like your main, I would say, stations.
Okay, so I think the first one after first job out of university, I didn't quite click with the company. And I left to set up my own first company. I was 23 years old. And
23?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was in the south of France, which was an area that I knew
well. You speak French?
I do speak French, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
From home?
Well, it's my degree, actually.
Okay.
French and Italian.
All right.
So, and the luck in Europe is if you get 2 of those, you get 1 free Spanish.
Okay.
So it's like a deal, buy 2, get 1 free.
Yeah.
It's not the same as speaking like Chinese, German, and Korean, which are completely different languages. They're all very, very linked. Anyway, so I wanted to set up this business dealing with children's activities, because I dealt and worked with children for many, many years as a director of summer camps and things like that. And I had this idea that I was sure, with my big arrogant head back then, this is brilliant, this can't fail, and it's funny, as an investor now, I look at founders who are very young who pitch to me, this can't fail. I'm like, you're deluded, you're like I was back in those days, and trying to understand that there is a potential failing on the way, and catch that earlier, which I didn't, and fail it did 100%. I made so many mistakes.
And what was the I would say, what was the outcome? Why you say it's a horrific?
I lost all my money.
Money?
Yeah.
Your money or your father's
money? No, my father's money. So I took a loan from my father and from a good friend.
Okay.
And it wasn't, look back on it. So it was
how much money?
£15,000.
It's a lot. We're talking about a 90s?
98, 99. That's the time. And a lot is relative. First of all, it was obviously much more than it is today. Yeah. But back then, as a 23-year-old with nothing, this was like my whole world.
I know.
And I packed up shop in France, made so many mistakes, and I thank the Lord for these mistakes, because they led me to a lot of knowledge going forward. And I remember I had this old Nissan Bluebird. That was my fifth-hand car.
Yeah.
And I was driving it all the way home to London from the south of France, chugging away along the autoroute. It was one of the loneliest journeys I've ever had.
You needed to tell your father. And
he knew already. He knew already. But that was the luck. And it took me about 5 years, I think, to pay the loans back in full. But that was really important.
You didn't say to yourself, that's it, I'm done with entrepreneurship?
Well, I did in a way, because what happened was, first of all, the impact of that failure, it was deflating. All of a sudden, and I didn't realize at the time how good that was for me, because as I said, I had this big head. I thought I could do anything. And realizing that you can't was actually strengthening me as a person. And it also taught me, you learn from your mistakes much better than you'll learn from other people, for sure.
And from your successes, much better.
Yeah, well, I think you learn much more from failures than you do success. Yeah. Oh, sorry, that was yeah. And so I got back to England, and I'm this 23-year-old with no money, debts. And one thing I knew I didn't want to do was go and work in UK corporate. I just didn't. It wasn't me. I didn't want to get swallowed into one of these big corporates. And I'd been seeing this nice Israeli girl for a few months, remotely. It was back in the day when people actually wrote letters to each other. I feel very proud that we have letters, handwritten letters.
I remember waiting. I had a girlfriend in France, by the way, the teenager, and I was used to wait for the postman.
Yeah,
outside.
It's a great time. Like it's a beautiful thing.
Every 3 weeks, if I was lucky.
You weren't waiting for 3 weeks, I hope.
Every 3 weeks, I was waiting for
the post to come.
A couple of days around the.
But I think it's a beautiful thing. People are, of a certain age, we say, oh, it's a shame youngsters don't have this, but it's true. We got the privilege to live through different things, but I guess they'll live through other things. They'll look back on the time when, do you remember we used to send WhatsApp messages to each other, things like that. So I guess
I remember getting with a specific letter with a picture, with actual picture of her.
Wow.
After many, many letters, how exciting this was. Imagine now you get,
I know, you just get so easy. Everything's too easy. Yeah. Absolutely. So
how old are we? Shit. Okay.
Let's leverage it in some way.
Yeah.
Okay, so I thought, I don't know what I'm going to do, and I didn't have any, not only did I not have the money, I didn't have the guts to try something new anyway.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, I'm back to square one, but I'm only 23. Let's go to Israel and see this girl and see what happens. Because I'd been seeing her, you know, she came to visit me in France, and I always joke with her that, because by the way, the happy ending here is she's still my wife after 22 years. Wow. So she's like always been my lucky charm. The only week that I actually broke even operationally in France was the week she came and visited me. Actually, she never lets me forget that. So I went to, and
she saw you during the downside.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And she took me on during the downside. This is the most amazing thing, you know. So
that's a good relationship.
She took me on. She was, not only did I have nothing, I had less than nothing. I had debts. So,
and she stayed there.
Wow, she stayed there. She's been my guiding light ever since. Wow. And so I just took deliberately a one-way ticket to Israel, because I wanted to give my mind, you know, a direction. Said, just take a one-way ticket, let's see. And I never came back on that ticket. Wow. Basically, that was 23 years ago almost. And in the end, I emigrated to Israel more for practical purposes, because I needed to work. And if you're trying to get a job in this country as a tourist, it's not going to fly. So I actually emigrated, not because I was a Zionist. I became a Zionist later on. And I love this country, adore it for all its faults, and there are plenty. But I love this place, and I'm delighted and proud that my children have grown up in this place. But I made Aliyah at the beginning to help me get a job, which I needed. And it was quite a while before my next, well, actually it wasn't that long, now that I think about it. After a year of teaching English, I realized I'm quite good at it. And I was teaching for other agencies here, like Berlitz, those sorts of things. So I set up my own English speaking business, and that was actually going well. That was with my wife, and she took care of all the admin, the HR, and we did courses. And it got to a stage where we had to decide. It was very successful from the point of view that there was demand for what we wanted to give. We were working with business English and banks and things like that. And I had to make a decision. Is this what I want to do, to go to the next level, to train and hire up other teachers? And I realized that's just not what I want to do. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew it wasn't that. And I was lacking some sort of belonging in this country, you know, because the courses and very lonely. You get up in the morning, you do a course, a lesson, course, lesson, and then you're on your own. You know what it's like. Yeah. And I really felt like I needed that connection to something. I always had, do you remember the old comedy Cheers? You remember the bar in Boston? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I always have this ringing in my head is the soundtrack was Where Everybody Knows Your Name. Do you remember that? Where everybody, and I just feel like I'm lacking that. I know where I go. Does anyone even know me? And this also signals a bit about my character. I need that. I need that belonging. And I was very, very lucky to get a job at the Sports Channel here. So I got a job in 2001 at the Sports Channel, which really saved me in this country. And my bosses there, I thank them to this day for that, gave me that opportunity, entry-level sort of production job. And because of my languages, and especially English, I quickly dealt with a lot of things abroad, and I ended up buying rights, which was fun, until the media downturn meant that I wasn't buying anymore. I was trying to cancel contracts to keep us out of court and things like that, which was less pleasant. But I learned a hell of a lot about the sports industry by working in sports TV. Because when you're in broadcast, you get to see the whole event from start to finish. You understand what's needed at the venue, how they run sponsorship at the venue, how the ticketing is run, the production, the OB van, the uplink, how the fans engage with that at home. And it's a brilliant intro into the sports industry. And I didn't choose it. I was fortunate. And then my next entrepreneurial drive came in 2004, where I set up again together with my wife. We worked together for 8 years, which is quite unbelievable, until I drove her crazy enough that she said enough is enough, of the business, not of the marriage. And that was a data analytics operation that became Redwood International Sports, which has been my anchor ever since. So, you know, that's, I think, in a rather large nutshell.
So you started in 2004, you sold it?
No, Redwood still goes.
Still going?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think anyone trying to get into the physical performance area now is really tough. Very saturated market. Very, very saturated. It's like, even if you've got a fantastic product, it's hard to be seen. You know, when you think about companies in your portfolio as well, it's one of the areas that I think I love that because I know it, but it's hard to get in front of clubs, and clubs, as you know, it's like they're still in this process of accepting upgraded tech for their teams, where I think the performance analytics can actually serve other industries, like the betting industry, with a better pay ticket. So, these are all learning areas, but I think that.
So what did you do there? What kind of challenge or need did you find there that you wanted to solve?
So it started, we were thinking that there must be more on the pitch that we can analyze that is available.
Yeah.
Back in 2004, it's crazy. There was nothing available. So you get the score of a game. Let's talk about football. So you get the score 2-1. Does it really tell the story? We all know it sort of only partially tells the story. So what more can you get? And only on the top leagues could you get anything like shots on target, shots off target, corners, for whatever that's worth. There was nothing really that tells the story about what's going on the game. And we set out to tell a better story, to really reflect what's going on the pitch. And where we really achieved great success was we added a huge layer of subjective analysis. And that was and that's difficult. And in entrepreneurship, difficult is great if you get it. It's not the blocker. If it's easy, it'll be easy for the next guy as well. I always think if we're sitting around a board table ideating about something, we've got to imagine that 20 other people, probably better than us, with deep pockets, are doing this exact same thing right now.
Yes.
So why are we better? That's always the challenge I put to any ideation process. Is why. Let's understand why we're better. So if it's like, oh, we can do this, we'll make $1 million. No, it doesn't work like that. So trying to gain a reflection of what's going on in the game statistically. I'm not talking just from a data point of view, but statistically. And there's a difference here. And there's an important difference that a lot of companies get wrong. They call themselves statistics companies. They're not. They're just throwing data at you and saying, now you deal with it. I'll give you, like in football, one of the least important pieces of information in football, if you're trying to understand what's going on the pitch, is, let's say, possession, which is great if you're sitting at home. It's an interesting stat, but it means nothing, literally nothing. Anyone who sits there thinking, wow, look, 73% possession, we're in control. It's nonsense. Okay. Mourinho is one of my favorite managers.
It says something about who is, handling the ball maybe, and about the dominance of the company, not necessarily the most attack company team. No.
Secret number one, everybody. It tells you literally nothing. If you go back to Mourinho when he was actually successful, he was a genius at when he was at Inter and then at Chelsea. He was a genius at controlling the game without actually holding the ball. But they controlled the game. Now, how do I know that? Because looking at other things in the game that other people weren't looking at, and understanding this, and you can say, well, okay, it's all assumptions and speculation. Well, after years of analytics, you prove certain assumptions. The data proves itself, but it takes time. And that's one of the things that we needed to invest quite a lot.
If you take maybe it's wrong, but if you take, let's say, 10 wins from Champions League, 9 out of the 10, correct me if I'm wrong, will have, or 8, the team that won had more possession. Would this be right?
Not necessarily.
No,
not necessarily.
7 out of 8.
Well, it depends. Like if you're talking about,
or no relations whatsoever.
So I would say it's the problem is that piece of information is taken out of context.
Okay.
So Inter of old will have had a certain amount of percentage of wins. Inter Milan,
yes,
would have had a certain amount of percentage of wins with a certain amount of possession. It's completely different to AC or to Arsenal, for example. Barcelona was classic.
Yeah.
Tiki-taka was all built on holding possession.
Yeah.
And
they took the championship like crazy.
Until teams worked out how to defend against tiki-taka. Okay. So this is one of the problems, is that in sports, you can't take one piece of data out of its context. So
you put it in a context and you put other analytics, and this is what you did at Redwood?
Yeah, that's basically, and that's what we still do today. Yeah. And the joy.
So what do I get, how does it work in Redwood?
From what, like
who's the customer? Just so I understand.
So our verticals that we work with are 3. We have the media vertical, which is the least interesting for us, because what a TV company wants is something that someone sitting on the sofa can understand in a graphic for 3 seconds. Okay. So we can provide that. That's not our USP, and we're no better. I'd say other people are much better at us. Okay. Then you've got the what I call the professional area, which is football clubs, scouters, national teams, things like that. It's fascinating, hugely complex, a load of ego there as well, as you can imagine, as you know.
That's manual work, by the way?
it's a combination.
Okay.
It's a combination. But the problem with working with clubs is that is a lot of ego there. It's like, and we're working statistically. We're trying to say what is the benefit of a certain player statistically, but it's not. Clubs want to know how am I going to bring home the money today, or not. They don't want to hear if you do this over the course of a year, you will benefit. That's no good for a manager. They need it to be translated.
So if I'm a Premier League club, or what do I get? What is the end product I get from you, or a federation?
At top levels, it's all fully customized, because a lot of these people have, and we don't have deliberately many clients, because very expensive products, and we need to be completely a part of the in-house team in many ways. We don't do shelf products at that level at all.
But I get what? I get the full analysis every game, every training as well?
Yeah, no training, but unless we have a specific setup, which is very, very rare. But you get a lot of preparation for the next game. You get a lot of on recruitment due diligence, basically. Yeah, you want to spend 20 million on a player.
Okay.
You should know whether he's good or not for your team, And
so you go back, you look at his statistics back, you like do due diligence on his performance.
Yeah, over the course of years, and try and work out statistically whether he will be a good fit for this team, because football is fascinating as a team sport. You can't just build a team of stars and expect them all to play together. You remember
it's a really tailored service.
Oh, extremely so. Okay. But that's one vertical. The biggest vertical that we work with, and one that caused us a lot of expansion, was sports betting, of course, because if you've got good maths, there's a little ego there. They just want your services. So, so those are the three verticals we work with. Of course, over the course of years, you upgrade your abilities, you look at it more, and now you've got a lot of machine learning techniques that can upgrade your ability to give even better stats, more precise. And this is the way we work now. So there's no end in
so the company is continuing to run, but you now have, it's like, you created a structure which allows you to do other things.
Well, that's been for a while. I mean,
and so tell us, you're investing. I know you've invested. I know you're part of like an investment group. Yeah.
Well, I'm connected to a number of VCs. I sit on the board for a couple of specific VCs as well.
I also want to hear your thoughts regarding where we are now. Because, we're now at beginning of July 2022. We see what's happening in the capital markets. I hear already startups that are worried that they're not going to complete their round of investment. I hear investors which are very happy. Suddenly they, startups that offered them a ticket in a valuation of 50 or 40 now reduced it to 20, maybe 15. They're willing to get the money. So from investors' perspective, maybe it's great. Well, startups are if you have the money, it's great. Now you can invest in, in more, I would say, reasonable prices. Is it disaster? Is it just, correction? How do you see that?
Well, let's talk first of all about the whole, the overall view, and then we'll talk about the individual players and how it works out with them. But generally, I think this was absolutely necessary. What was going on last year was crazy, like no short of crazy. You're looking at tens of millions of dollars being thrown around with sometimes, excuse me for saying this, but very little professionalism. Sometimes people were cutting corners on due diligence because there was a huge FOMO for tens of millions of dollars. I mean, this is ridiculous. It was frustrating for me, and I've got far less experience in investing than a lot of the people that I was seeing, and I was like, and I'm saying to myself, am I missing something? I just don't understand,
So you're saying there was a FOMO, and that's why people invested in a ridiculous prices of
there was that,
companies?
And then there was all this like expansion that was, it was like people were telling a story that wasn't yet written. They were showing you a story that wasn't yet written, and there wasn't any basis for this. The pages weren't even printed yet. And when that happens, and the important thing to realize is it's cyclical. This has not happened before. This happens. It goes in a cycle. We're just in a downturn, just like every other downturn in the past as well. And it feels disastrous at the time, but it's just a downturn. Now, people who raised very, very high valuations and were patting themselves on the back last year, it's not going to help them if their business is still going to fail at the end. And a lot of failures are going to happen. There's going to be a disproportionate amount of failures because of the amount of investment that was carried out unprofessionally in the last couple of years. But just like in 2000, when people said, dot-com bubble, at the internet bubble. Well, the internet survived after that. It's just the strong companies survived, and all the people who weren't strong fell by the wayside. Same thing's going to happen here. It's not like there are no opportunities now. If we're talking about investors, you just got to be professional, as you should have been last year as well, when it was easy just to get dragged. I made probably more investments last year than I probably should have done. Maybe, it's just the way things were. It's like, God, I want to jump on the Web3 train. I want to jump on that, even though I'm very happy with the Web3 investment I made. But, it's easy to get carried away, and people now are going to be more professional. And it means that the companies...
People, you mean the investors, the
investors. So let's talk about investors. And I talk to a lot of investors these days that go, listen, if it's pre-revenue, I don't want to know. So they've cut down already. If it's pre-revenue. One guy I spoke to the other day, he said, if it's less than 1 million ARR, I don't want to know. Don't want to even hear. Don't even look at a debt.
And that's a new thing?
Yeah, definitely. People are tightening their belts. Because of this downturn. But it means, and then there's another VC fund that I know who I really like, and they said they're going contrarian. They're actually going heavier. So because they believe that the contrarian nature is actually the right way to go. And a lot of seasoned investors think this, is that last year when everyone's rushing in, hold back, and now everyone's pulling back, this is the time to really go.
I have a good friend that last time in the 2008, I remember sitting in Rothschild Boulevard in Tel Aviv, and I was seeing him as investment banker, all excited, and we were all like, we're dealing with IPOs in London by hand and on the AIM. It was disaster, and he was like shiny, and I asked him, his name's the same as Amir. I asked him, what's wrong with you, man? Why are you so happy? He said, what do you mean? I'm waiting for this time of the downturn, and then I get my checkbook and my suitcase, James Bond suitcase, and I go and buy. And if you think about it, a lot of VCs are, probably have if they've invested in the last 2 years in the higher valuations, they are not in a good shape now.
No, that's the thing. It's all to do with timing. Absolutely.
So if you do have the capital now, to invest now, probably in startups, they will be willing to get the good startups that are there, you can see that they are sound. The team is sound. They already have the customers, the initial customers. They're growing. They have something that the market really needs, and they proved it. Maybe now you can get the most amazing deal.
Yeah, definitely. Because last year, people were like, without even blinking, 20 million valuation, 30 million valuation. Look, this time, people know that they can't say that, and it's good. It's good because it's just going to cause failures. A business, it doesn't succeed because it did a seed round for 20 million. It hasn't succeeded yet.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? That's the thing. It succeeds, and this is what
the work just started when you raise the money.
So sometimes I sit around the table. And I'm like, I say, am I the only one that actually thinks a business needs to make money here? You're like, it's just, it drives me mad. It's like, it's all about the raise. It's all about.
So you think this downturn maybe will make the hype around, especially Web3, by the way. We have at Hype, we have a new cycle focusing on Web3 startups. And what's interesting is, we get about 150 startups selected now, which out of them, they're all Web3. So NFT, metaverse. And what is different from this cycle to other cycles in the past, which were SportsTech in general, broadcasting, is the valuation. The valuation that those startups, some of them, 6 months, just started 6 months ago, they're already looking at 15 to 20 million valuation. Now, this is it's still under negotiation. Good for us. It's still just an MOU. Once they are accepted into the program, we still have an opportunity to look again at the final valuation. But without a doubt, this was, I would say, odd, to say the least, in terms of the numbers that were thrown there. And I agree with you. There is, but there is another angle. If you think of the Web3 and metaverse startups, unlike SportsTech, which the implementation is fairly simple, with Web3, metaverse, NFT, there is a lot of process of trial and error. So there is a longer time until revenue. If you had a good startup in SportsTech performance, if it's good, it's doing the work, you can get a deal.
For sure.
On metaverse NFT, if you're not the big players, the Dapper Labs or the Sorare of the world, it will take time until you generate revenue.
Yeah.
And here it could be quite challenging,
but then,
even for the good startups.
Sure,
to make it, because I think the cycle from doing a pilot and then getting the revenue in will be probably longer than the regular, I would say, sport tech industry.
Yeah, I agree with that totally. But again, there's an investor that fits everything.
Yes. There are investors which will have the patience for that, and will wait for 2-3 years until the Web3 will come back. Yeah.
Someone spoke to me recently. Someone told me recently, a very wise guy. He said there are two types of investors, generally speaking. There's the ones that like the fuzzy blanket, the warm fuzzy blanket. What did he mean by that? And I immediately realized that I'm one of these guys. Blanket. The warm fuzzy blanket. What does it mean? Is that I can see the revenues coming in, so I've got that security, etc., etc. And then there's the others that look for the moonshot.
Yeah.
And he was specifically a moonshot guy. And if you've got the pockets to do that and the risk appetite to do that, then you are happy, totally happy with that 1 in 30 coming off, but for a huge amount. Yeah. Whereas if you're the fuzzy blanket investor, and I realized that I'm a bit more like that.
Fuzzy.
Yeah, and the reason is, I think, is because I've built businesses myself. So you're always a bit more risk averse. You know the pitfalls and I just sort of click a bit more with, what are the earnings? What's the, are we making money? When are we breaking even? Because that's what I've dealt with all my life. Whereas and I'm a bit jealous in a way. I wish I could be a bit of a moonshot guy, but I'm less of that. And I agree with you that Web3 and Metaverse are the big opportunities now, but they're also like big opportunities. They're big risk. And until we understand how that's going to play out, there will be a lot that fall by the wayside. A lot of companies that look fantastic today will fall by the wayside, but it's only through trial and error, as exactly you said.
I can relate to something you said to me before the session today about, the inspiration, when you look at yourself investing or, creating something, it's different. And you're more excited about creation and, and creating a new venture and leading something new than investing. And, I, for a long time, after I sold my business in 2003, I started an investment house boutique and I raised money to a fund and I started investing. Yeah. And I so much wanted to be in the other side. I'm the investor now. I don't need to beg for money anymore. Yeah. But for so fast, I lost interest in because, people think that, if I'm an entrepreneur, one day I will be an investor. Yeah. But it's not, investor is a very specific type of I would say, profession. Yeah. And it's not for all. No. Most of the entrepreneurs listening to us now think, when I grow up, I will be an investor. Yeah. It's not necessarily that, because the exciting, if you wake up in the morning to create something, to make a difference in the world, to sit up with numbers and make the calculation. And, this is totally, I couldn't see those Excels. I couldn't really look at, it wasn't for me. I needed to, and then very fast, I had a partner managing the startups and I looked for new businesses and ending up with Hype eventually. Yeah. So, I believe this is where you are now. So you're not starting an investor's career now.
No. And well, that's the thing, is that I'm sort of defined for the last 2-3 years as an investor, but it's not my being. I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and I think that just like on your journey, we've all got to understand what it is that drives us. And I'm exactly the same as you described. I'm at the due diligence table. I feel like I'm on the wrong side of the table. Yeah. I'm sort of connecting with the founders because I'm much more like them. And other people, I was like, shut up, but that's what I feel. I feel their pain and whatever, which I try and leverage that as an investor, because then you're connected more, and you're not. It's great if you can get investors who are not on the other side of the table or on your side of the table, but I know that that's not my, it's not what I want to do. It's not what my passion. I love the advantages of being an investor give, and I feel hugely privileged to be able to invest. I mean, it's an enormous privilege to be in this situation, but I know that I'm just like you. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I want to build something. I want to ride that roller coaster, and I want to keep going.
So let's say for the entrepreneurs with us now, if I will ask you, Daniel, you've been to shitty times, and I know you have been. Yeah, there is nobody in this space, which I think is the hardest hardest work in the, maybe Prime Minister of Israel is a little bit harder, or I don't know.
It's a lot harder being the Prime Minister of Israel.
Let's make it not, too much, of this local swamp. But I think this, you've been as an entrepreneur, and you went through the process, and where you are now. You're now what, 50?
47.
47.
Do I look 52?
No,
you look 50?
You look 40. No, I'm 55, so I think everybody's 50. So, you're on the right side of the 50s, as they say.
Yeah, still.
What would be like, to the entrepreneurs with us today? Give us like 3 real, life tips that will really can help them on their journey, especially now, where some of them, I'm sure, are struggling.
Wow, 3 life tips. I think one of the main things after going through, and again, let's not forget that you and I are also in the middle of our journeys. We've got a hell of a lot to learn ahead of us as well. It's not like we're talking here like 2 old men that have seen everything. We haven't seen everything yet. We may have seen more than other people, but So
a good friend of mine, just in brackets, asked me recently, Amir, what are you going to do when you grow up? Yeah, I'll ask you this in the end. So 3 tips.
So I would say the first one is, I think when you're young, you see people and you can see people on podcasts. You go, oh, look at that. I want to be like that. And I think that what I've learned is that everyone is very, very individual. And what you need to do is not think, I want to be like that. I want to take certain things I like about that person or lessons that I've learned from those people and bring it into my character slowly. And it takes time to really understand who you are. Like I wouldn't have known when I was 23 that I'm much more of an entrepreneur than an investor, whatever. I may have guessed something I don't know, but I wouldn't even thought of that. Do you know what I mean? I think that it takes you until you're 30 generally to really understand a little bit more about who you are, and you stop playing a game of being this person or that person. You take masks off. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, it's very individual. But too many people look and they go, oh my God, look at that person giving amazing life advice. I want to be like him. You don't want to be like him. You want to take certain lessons from that person, bring it into your character.
Yeah, I think Jordan Jefferson says, you want to be a little bit better than the person you were, not compare it to the lousy person you are thinking you are now.
Yes.
Just a little bit better to who you were a few days ago or a year ago.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And in fact, that leads me on to another tip. Now I think about it, is that it's all so easy, especially in this world of social media, to put yourself down. And it's and people talk about this all the time, but it's so important to realize that social media is a nightmare. Like I look, I'm only on LinkedIn. I'm not on anywhere else deliberately. It's a huge waste of time for me. Even on LinkedIn, if you trust LinkedIn, everyone's doing everyone's making IPOs. Everyone's unbelievable. We're all successful. We're all getting new jobs. No one says I got fired today. No one says, oh, my investment failed today.
4 million.
No one says that. Some people do, but it's not proportionate to real life. And so you can easily and naturally get dragged into thinking, I'm not good enough. And you may not be good enough, but it's not because of social media. You've just got to sort of realize that how your chances of success are probably better than you think, because not everyone's perfect. We have this tendency to think, wow, look at these people. They're all top-notch professionals. Well, more than often I find out that the people I thought were top-notch professionals are not. They're just other people. And realizing that people are just other people in life, I think allows people to take a deep breath and say, I'm going to do it anyway. Yeah. And that's critical.
I would add to this, you mentioned, don't look at the social media as, the way things are. I would add to this, surround yourself with people that it's like, your home team, that people that takes you up, clean people that are dragging you down. And bring a team of people, friends, works, around you, colleagues, friends, people you just consult, mentors that are there to take you up when you're down. And I think having the ability to surround yourself, even with paid mentors, which can be there for you to take you up, because the journey is bloody hard. So that's the second thing.
But we'll add to that, it's not simple. To recognize who's there in your corner and who's actually pretending to be in your corner. When you're younger, and I'm naturally a bit naive, like sometimes think, oh God, look at this person, really, really nice. And they think, And then I need one of, my guys to say, Daniel, careful, think they might want this, they might want that,
Yes.
And so you've always got trying to identify who's actually in your corner and who has an agenda.
Yes.
Is important, and that's not simple.
Yes. Yes. To really clean the environment around you, and create a safe environment, especially to take you to the next level, not to drag you down.
Yeah.
So that's the second one. Third one.
Oh, third one, you're pushing me on this one. How about, I think going back to one of the things I said before, that I'm sort of naturally blessed with a lack of fear of uncertainty. I think that in order to try,
I wouldn't agree with lack of fear. I think there is fear. There is a fear always. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you're okay with this fear. You're not freaking out. It's not lack of fear. There is a fear there when I'm starting something new. You are starting something new. You don't want to fail. There is a fear.
I think,
but you're okay. Other people freak out and they leave, or they don't want to go there. You're okay with staying there, and it's like being in the frozen water. You are okay with suffering until you feel okay. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think you've touched on a really, really good point, which I think is actually better than the point I was going to make. So I'm going to make that point. Okay. Suffering is important. And I think that people
being okay with suffering.
If one of my favorite books is, and I'm not a great reader. I wish I was a great reader, but one of my favorite books is The Road Less Traveled by Scott Empek. And I really recommend The Road Less Traveled. Okay. And the opening sentence is life is difficult. And then the opening paragraph goes on to explain why, once you embrace the fact that life is difficult, it's actually a very, very positive thing. Because if we understand that life is difficult and we stop expecting life to be easy, then it ceases to become difficult. You transcend that difficulty. And this, I think, is not just business, life. If you get up every morning thinking things are going to be perfect, you're going to be bitter about the idiot that cut you off. If we drive in this country, if you expect people to drive beautifully all the time, you're going to be pissed off all the time. Yeah. Life is the same. You've got to not be pessimistic. That's not the point, but expecting life is difficult, understanding that if I expect it and actually that's okay, and it's good to suffer, then you come out the other side. You transcend that difficulty. So understanding that if I'm going through a bad patch, it's like, well, hang on, this is great. What have I got to learn from this? How do I get through it?
I remember once there was a period, I'm swimming usually. Swimming twice a week, not that much, but I used to run for a while. And I remember somebody told me in running, I don't know if you run.
Occasionally,
there is the period in the beginning that you start to suffer. Just bear with the suffering. And I think I can relate to that also in business.
Absolutely.
It's being okay with suffering and seeing that you're suffering while you're running. You're not dead. It's not pleasant. But it will pass. And bear with it, and it will get a little bit easier. Just being there, not freaking out. It's too much.
Embracing it. Embracing it. This is good because I know that it's gonna. And I think that's the big difference between a lot of. Obviously, you need a lot of luck in life as well. People need to understand that. Any successful entrepreneur, if he thinks it's all down to him and didn't get a nice dose of luck and timing on the way, he's deluded. I know that I had my fair share of luck along the way, but understanding that the difference between a lot of successful entrepreneurs and failed ones are the ones that just couldn't take the heat. They just didn't like the suffering, so they just didn't do it.
And in addition to that, the difference between successful and unsuccessful entrepreneurs is the one that sticked there long enough. And I remember once in New York hearing somebody says on the stage, sometimes you need to stay long enough in business to get lucky. Stay long enough. Hang in there. I got a call from a guy selling. I have a guitar. Even here. And the guy is offering guitar lessons. But for 2 years, he's not giving up on me. I once filled up the form, and he's like, and now he got me, and I said, you know what? Let's do it. And let's. Because and he was there, and I really admired his persistency. He's a guitar teacher, but he's not giving up on that. So I think people appreciate, when we started 7 years ago, people thought, it's just a hype, but they see it's an ongoing. They see it's
still here.
So and people appreciate persistency, and they appreciate the fact that you are there long enough, they feel that there is something there eventually that, will bring value if it's, you're still there. And that's something that I think entrepreneurs sometimes lacking, because to see this perspective and, hanging there has its own merit. Last question as we're wrapping up. Daniel, what would you like to do when you grow up?
I don't want to grow up.
That's a good one.
Who wants to grow up? I'll find out when I grow up. I don't know.
Yeah, but give us a hint. When you grow up, when you have a picture in your mind, in 3 years' time, 5 years' time, what would it be?
Well, after 20,
if everything is possible.
So after 22 years in sports, I honestly believe that that's all I know, and I don't want to do anything else. And if I can bring impact to lives of people through sports, through my career, my network, my knowledge, experience, I'll be so happy. And that's what I think it is. It's not just making business, it's bringing some impact to the lives of people through sports, because I believe that sport is so powerful. Sport is more than just sport. It's life for me. It impacts people. When you think about what sport can do to take kids from the wrong side of the tracks to the right side of the tracks, sport can impact people in a way that I don't believe. Obviously, I'm biased. We're biased. We love sport. I don't believe any other area or sector can do what sports can do.
Like what? Tell me about potential impact. You mentioned the kids. What else?
Well, the kids, it's a massive one. I mean, there's there are so many stories about, if it wasn't for sports, then a number of people, stories in South African rugby, for example, they would have ended up in jail or dead in gang warfare, or they went on to play for rugby, even captained rugby, the rugby national team in South Africa. It's just one example, and there are so many. And it doesn't have to be a famous thing as well. If you can take a kid and through sports, because it's education, put his mind in a focus of being better than maybe his circumstances, because it's not a level playing field. I mean, we know that. I came from a middle-class background. You say I went through difficulty, whatever. Middle-class background. People have gone through a hell of a lot more difficult times than me. And it's not a level playing field. So the people who are being told all their childhood, you're no good, you're no good, you're no good. Sport has the ability to give them an escape to actually be something else, to make them believe. And then it could be through sport that kid actually goes to university, becomes a lawyer. So it doesn't have to be the sports celeb in the end, but that's the power of sport. It's enormous. And for me, I've always dealt on the top level of sport. I'm actually getting more and more interested in the grassroots level of sport. And I'm interested in how there's a lot of tech these days that are actually aimed at looking at the long tail of sport, which is always very difficult to monetize traditionally. Now it's getting possible because tech prices have come down. And I think this gives opportunity to really make a massive impact to people's lives. So it's not just about making professional sports players better or making betting operators earn more money or whatever. I personally would love to, and I know it sounds idealistic, but that's who I am. I want to be able to use, if I've come to something, if I've made some success in my life, I want to turn that into significance by helping to impact people's lives through sport.
Amazing. And you know what hype vision is?
Go on.
Impact people's lives through the power of sports and innovation.
Oh, there you go. So we're very aligned.
And and the innovation part, I think now is even getting, looking at impacting people through I would say, the new platform of Web3, which will allow co-creation work, co-creation, people from everywhere, speaking about leveling up and allowing, minorities and less vantage minorities to, I think this will open up the world to more interesting and inspiring game for more people. And I think sports innovation as a whole, alongside sports, of course, I think really can continue and bring this impact that you're talking about. So
I believe.
Daniel, it was a pleasure. Thank you very much for coming to Hype Offices, and I'm sure we'll have another chance to follow up on that.
I look forward to it. Thank you very much, Amir. Appreciate it.
Thank you all. Thanks for joining. Bye for now.